Well, it's quite a complex field. Even the therapists can't really agree how to work. There's a school of therapists which thinks we should affirm people in their trans identity. And there's another school of therapists that thinks we should not really affirm or deny a person's trans identity, but explore where their gender dysphoria is coming from in the hope that they might find a solution to their gender dysphoria that doesn't involve radical surgery or hormones. But even the psychotherapy profession can't sort this out. So the idea of bringing the law to bear on it, the blunt instrument of the law, and the fear that that will put in the hearts of some therapists who might only want to do the best by their clients, I think that could have a very detrimental effect, actually, on both sides of the psychotherapeutic debate, because people who wanted to help a person come to terms with their own body, perhaps somebody suffering from body hatred, someone like Sinead who had been abused, and felt uneasy in their body as a result and interpreted that as being trapped in the wrong body and then surgically altered their body, they obviously would really benefit from having psychotherapeutic treatment before changing their bodies. But if the therapist ended up being accused of trying to help the person change their identity, their gender identity, by virtue of reconciling themselves with their natal body, that could result in the person being accused of practicing conversion therapy. In other words, they were attempting to get the person to change their gender identity. Therapists would be terrified that they could then be sent to prison for doing that. And it's not very clear whether or not that would happen. But what is clear is that there are a group of quite extreme trans radical activists who will actually interpret any attempt at working psychotherapeutically with gender dysphoria, or in fact looking at psychological issues that might underlie gender dysphoria, they will interpret that as transphobic, and they will also interpret that as being an attempt to practice conversion therapy. So if one of those trans activists brings a case against the therapist in the law, then the therapist will have to answer that case in a court of law. And I don't think that's really the right place for a therapist to be defending their practice. That should be done in a psychotherapy profession. And the regulated psychotherapy profession has never successfully brought a case of somebody practicing gender identity conversion therapy in the whole history of a thing called the Memorandum of Understanding, which has existed for over 4 years now. There have been lots of attempts to accuse therapists of practicing conversion therapy, and none of the regulatory psychotherapy bodies has yet brought a single case to fruition. So I think the government is bringing popular legislation in to try and prevent something which is not a real danger. I agree with the journalist who just spoke that gay conversion therapy is a terrible thing and it should be outlawed, but no actual respectable psychotherapist would practice such a thing at the moment in this country. They would be struck off from any register. So again, I think this is a piece of popular legislation designed to buy the government support, but it's not really thinking about anything other than a political activist lobby and being popular. It's not really thinking about the people like Sinead that this could harm if proper exploratory therapy is criminalised. I hope you heard all of that.
Yeah, I did.
I've lost the contact with you.
No, Bob, thank you so much for coming on and giving your esteemed professional position on this extremely controversial topic, and nobody else is talking about it. We're proud to be doing that here today on the afternoon agenda. So thank you ever so much for joining me.
There is one thing I could add, actually, which is the affirmative therapists under the proposed legislation. Even the affirmative therapists could be brought under the law, because if somebody retrospectively realises that they've actually been struggling with the consequences of abuse, which have been stored in their body and experienced as body discomfort and interpreted as gender dysphoria, or if somebody in fact has been struggling with being gay but not actually being able to reconcile themselves to that and then altered their bodies, anybody affirming the trans identity and encouraging the transition under the proposed legislation could be accused of practicing conversion therapy. In the second case I've just outlined, from gay to straight. So the move from being a gay man to being a trans woman, for instance, and turning into being heterosexual as a result, under the government's current proposals, that also could be criminalised. So both sides of the therapy profession, the affirmative and the exploratory, are going to be terrified of practicing And what will happen then is that the drug companies and the surgeons and the medical profession will clean up because they'll be the only act in town.